Thanksgiving was supposed to be about family, but that night, my father stood up at the table, his voice like thunder, and said the words that shattered me. "You're no longer my child. You're nothing to this family." The room froze. No one defended me. Not my mother, not my siblings. They all looked away as if I didn't exist. What they didn't know was that I had been preparing for this moment. If they wanted me gone, fine. But I wasn't just walking away empty-handed. I was walking away with something that would change everything. And when I finally revealed it, the family who disowned me would beg for forgiveness. Thanksgiving morning had always been a mess in our house. Pots clanging, voices raised, the smell of turkey and pies flooding the air. But this year, as I stepped into the dining room, something felt off. My brother and his fiancée sat close together, whispering and laughing, while my sister tapped endlessly on her phone. My father, already with a bourbon in hand though it wasn't even noon, stood tall at the head of the table like a king about to deliver a decree. My mother moved quietly in the background, keeping her head low, as if she already knew a storm was coming. I took my seat, trying to ignore the tension. I'd been keeping a secret for months, working double shifts, pouring everything into a side business that no one in my family even knew about. I was tired, yes, but proud. For once, I wasn't the failure they thought I was. Dinner began with the usual small talk and the clinking of silverware. Then came my father's annual family speech, the one where he reminded us that loyalty and respect meant everything in this family. Except this year, his voice wasn't proud. It was angry. "Some of us don't deserve to sit at this table," he said suddenly, his eyes fixed on me. The laughter died. My sister's phone slipped from her hands. "What?" I asked cautiously. "You," he snapped, his voice booming. "You bring nothing to this family. No contribution. No stability. No respect. I'm done pretending you belong here. From this day forward, you're not my child." He slammed his glass down so hard that bourbon splashed onto the white tablecloth. For a moment, I thought he was joking. But no one laughed. Not even my mother. She kept her eyes down, lips pressed tightly shut. My brother shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. My sister stared at her plate. That's when it hit me. They all agreed. I wasn't family to them anymore. The words stung like knives, but behind the pain, something else began to rise, defiance. Because what my father didn't know was that I had been preparing for this day in silence. While they dismissed me as a failure, I had built something of my own. Something that would soon make his words meaningless. If he wanted me out, fine. But when I walked away, I'd make sure he realized exactly what he had thrown away. And that was just the beginning of the Thanksgiving disaster none of them would ever forget. The silence after my father's declaration was deafening. Even the crackle of the fireplace felt louder than anyone's breath. My heart hammered in my chest, but outwardly, I forced myself to stay calm. If they wanted to see me crumble, they weren't going to get that satisfaction. I pushed my chair back slowly, the screech of the wood against the floor slicing through the tension. "All right then," I said quietly. My voice trembled just slightly, but I steadied it. "If that's how you feel, I won't stay where I'm not wanted." My father sneered. "Finally, you're making a smart choice." I glanced around the table, searching for even one set of eyes that might meet mine. My mother's gaze stayed fixed on the gravy boat. My sister's fingers fidgeted with her phone, her jaw clenched. My brother avoided me completely, too busy pretending to sip his wine. Not one person spoke up. Not one person cared enough to defend me. It was like I had already been erased. I grabbed my coat from the back of the chair and walked out of the dining room. The weight of their rejection pressed heavily on my chest, but beneath it all, there was a strange clarity. I had always been the outcast, the disappointment. Now they had made it official. And maybe that was exactly what I needed, to stop seeking their approval, to stop trying to belong. When I stepped outside, the cold night air slapped me awake. I walked to my car, hands shaking, my mind racing. The old me would have sat in that car and cried until my eyes burned. But not this time. Because I wasn't as powerless as they thought. Over the last year, while they mocked me for not having a real career, I had been building a business from scratch. What started as a side hustle had quietly exploded. It wasn't just some hobby, it was profitable, successful, and growing faster than I ever imagined. They had no idea I had enough savings to live without them. No idea I had already purchased my own apartment. No idea that people outside of this family respected me, even if they didn't. As I sat in the driver's seat, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't the end of the road. It was the beginning. If my father wanted to disown me, then I would return the favor. Not out of spite alone but out of strength. I would make sure they saw with their own eyes what I became without them. And when that day came, it wouldn't just be revenge, it would be justice. I started the engine, the headlights cutting through the darkness. Thanksgiving was over for me. But the real feast, the one where I finally claimed my independence, was only just beginning. The drive home that night was a blur of headlights and emotions. Anger, hurt, betrayal. But underneath it all, a spark of determination. If they didn't want me, then fine. I would build a life so strong, so undeniable, that they would one day choke on their own words. When I walked into my small apartment, it didn't look like much compared to my family's grand house. The furniture was second-hand, the walls a little too bare, and the heater clanked like it was begging for retirement. But it was mine. Every bill paid with money I had earned, every piece of furniture brought in with sweat and sacrifice. It was freedom in its rawest form. I sat down at my desk, booted up my laptop, and opened the spreadsheets and emails that had become my lifeline. My business, what my father had laughed off as a waste of time, was steadily growing. I had been designing digital products, marketing them online, and building a loyal customer base. While my siblings relied on handouts, I was learning to stand on my own. That night, instead of drowning in despair, I worked. Hours passed, and I barely noticed. By sunrise, I had closed 2 new deals and responded to clients across 3 time zones. Exhaustion gnawed at me, but it felt different now, like fuel instead of weakness. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. I fell into a rhythm. Work, learn, improve, repeat. I studied marketing strategies late into the night, read business books cover to cover, and watched others fail and succeed until I understood the patterns. Every time I felt like quitting, I remembered my father's voice. "You're nothing to this family." And every time it pushed me harder. Slowly, the cracks began to show in their narrative about me. My bank account grew. My apartment transformed. New furniture, better equipment, even art on the walls that I bought myself. I wasn't rich yet, but I was steady. Independent. Then came the day that changed everything. A big client reached out, interested in a long-term partnership. The contract was worth more than I had ever made in a single year. When I signed it, my hands trembled, not from fear, but from the realization that this was real. My business wasn't just surviving. It was thriving. I thought back to Thanksgiving, to that table where they had all looked away. They thought they had broken me. But here I was, stronger than ever. And yet, I didn't rush to tell them. I didn't post about it on social media, didn't call to rub it in their faces. No. The best revenge isn't loud. It's quiet, steady, and undeniable. I wanted them to discover it themselves. To see me succeed not because I shouted it from the rooftops, but because my name started appearing in places they couldn't ignore. That day was coming. And when it did, they would finally understand. I didn't just survive without them, I thrived. It happened gradually, like a whisper turning into a roar. At first, my business was invisible to them. I was the forgotten child, erased from family photos, left out of gatherings. But the world outside my family noticed me. Clients praised my work. Reviews poured in. My name started appearing in small industry newsletters, then bigger ones. One evening, months after Thanksgiving, I received an invitation that made my heart race. A keynote spot at a business conference in the city. My company had been selected as a rising success story. Me, the failure my father disowned, was going to stand on stage and share how I built something from nothing. The night of the event, I wore a tailored suit I had bought with my own hard-earned money. As I walked into the grand hall, lined with banners and lights, I felt like I was finally stepping into the life I was meant to live. Cameras flashed, journalists scribbled notes, and when I delivered my speech, the audience erupted into applause. The next morning, an article was published. From outcast to entrepreneur, the story of your name. My photo was front and center. My story wasn't just mine anymore. It was out in the open. And that's when my family started to notice. My sister was the first to reach out. A simple text message. Saw your article. Congrats, I guess. I could feel the resentment dripping from every word. My brother, ever the opportunist, sent a longer message, hinting at how we should catch up soon and maybe work together. My mother, quiet as always, left a voicemail, her voice shaking as she said she was proud of me. But my father? Silence. Complete, deliberate silence. I knew what that meant. He had seen it. He had read the article, maybe even watched the video of my speech. And the fact that he couldn't bring himself to say a word, that was confirmation enough. Meanwhile, cracks began to show in their perfect little world. My brother's fiancée broke off their engagement after discovering he was drowning in debt. My sister, who had always bragged about her social circles, started losing friends as her lies caught up with her. Even my father, once the untouchable patriarch, was facing financial troubles that no one dared to talk about openly. And there I was, rising while they fell. One evening, as I sat in my apartment, now upgraded into a sleek, modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, I got another email. This time, it wasn't just from a client or a journalist. It was from a family friend. Someone close to my father. The email was short but heavy with implication. Your father's been talking about you. He won't admit it out loud, but he knows he made a mistake. He's losing grip, and he's realizing you're not the failure he painted you to be. I leaned back in my chair, letting the words sink in. For the first time the balance of power was shifting. They had disowned me. But soon, they would learn what it felt like to be disowned right back. It started with small attempts. I like on my social media posts from my sister. A random, "How have you been?" text from my brother. My mother even sent a card for my birthday, something she hadn't done in years, scribbling, "I hope you're well. We miss you." But I wasn't fooled. None of it was genuine. They weren't suddenly proud of me. They were curious. They were worried. They were scrambling to patch the cracks in their facade now that the child they had discarded was thriving without them. For weeks, I ignored their messages. I focused on my work, my team, and my growth. My company had doubled in size, and opportunities were flooding in faster than I could handle. I was too busy to waste time on hollow words from people who had let me bleed alone on Thanksgiving night. But then came the phone call. It was late, almost midnight, when my phone buzzed. The caller ID froze me in place. Dad. I almost didn't answer. But something inside me, curiosity, maybe, made me swipe the screen. "Hello," I said, my voice cold. There was a pause, then his gravelly voice. "We need to talk." I laughed bitterly. "Funny. Last time we talked, you said I wasn't your child anymore." His silence was heavy, like he knew I was right but couldn't bring himself to admit it. Finally, he said, Things haven't been easy here. I might have been too harsh that night." Too harsh. That's what he called disowning me. "Is that why you're calling?" I asked. To smooth it over with a half apology? Another pause. Then, low and reluctant, "We could use your help." There it was. The truth. My father, the man who had cast me out like trash, was now asking for my help. Apparently, his business had been crumbling. Bad investments, poor decisions, debts piling up. The pillar of the family was losing his empire, and the rest of them were feeling the ripple effect. My brother had relied on him financially, my sister had clung to his name for status, and my mother had built her life around his dominance. Without him propping them up, they were sinking. And now they wanted me, the one they discarded, to save them. I let his words hang in the air, every second stretching into a lifetime. Finally I said, "I told you that night, I won't stay where I'm not wanted. You disowned me, remember? That's what you wanted. And now, I'm giving you exactly what you asked for." He started to argue, but I cut him off. "You told me I was nothing. But now you're calling because you see I became something without you. I don't owe you anything. Not money. Not loyalty. Not forgiveness. From this moment forward, I disown you." And with that, I ended the call. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trembling when I hung up on my father. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't small. I was free. The night I hung up on my father, something inside me clicked into place. For years, I had carried the weight of their approval like a chain. That phone call was the moment the chain snapped. And suddenly, everything moved faster. Within months, my company expanded internationally. What had once been a side hustle had become a recognized brand with clients across continents. My story, the outcast who built success from rejection, spread through interviews, articles, and podcasts. People wanted to hear how I'd turned pain into power. One morning, as I walked into my office, my own office with glass walls overlooking the skyline, I caught my reflection. Sharp suit, confident stride, a team waiting for my leadership. I was no longer the quiet disappointment hiding at family dinners. I was someone the world respected. Meanwhile, the cracks in my family's world widened into chasms. My brother, once smug and arrogant, had to move back home after his debts caught up with him. His fiancée was gone, his career stagnant, his name tainted. My sister, desperate for attention, burned bridges in her social circles until she was left isolated. And my father, the man who once held power like a crown, was scrambling to save his business. His empire was shrinking, and whispers spread about his failures. The irony wasn't lost on me. And then it happened. I was invited to a gala, a major industry event filled with business leaders, politicians, and celebrities. Cameras lined the red carpet, reporters snapping photos. As I posed for pictures, a reporter leaned in and whispered, "Did you know your father is here tonight?" My chest tightened, but I kept my composure. I walked inside, head high, as flashes followed me. Sure enough, there he was. My father standing at the edge of the room, his face pale as he watched people greet me with admiration. I could see the disbelief in his eyes, the realization that the child he had cast aside was now someone he could never control again. At one point, a wealthy investor approached me and said loudly, "Your story is inspiring. You've accomplished more in a few years than most people do in a lifetime." Cameras caught the moment. My father heard every word. He tried to approach me later, weaving through the crowd like a shadow. "We need to talk," he muttered. But this time, I didn't flinch. I met his eyes and said calmly, "I already said everything I needed to. You disowned me. Tonight, I show the world why I never needed you." His jaw tightened, his pride swallowing him whole. For once, he had no power. As I turned back toward the lights, the cameras, and the future I had built with my own hands, I realized the ultimate truth. I didn't just disown them back. I outgrew them. The gala had been the turning point, but the final act came weeks later. I was sitting in my office one Friday morning when my assistant walked in nervously. "There are visitors," she said. When I stepped into the lobby, I froze. My entire family was there. My brother, shoulders slumped, his arrogance drained. My sister, eyes red from crying. My mother, clutching her purse like it was the only thing holding her together. And my father, the man who once disowned me, looked older than I had ever seen him. Defeated. For a moment, I just stared at them. A year ago, I would have killed for this. For them to look at me with regret. For them to beg. My father cleared his throat. "We've made mistakes," he said. His voice cracked with pride swallowed whole. "I made mistakes. I shouldn't have said what I said. We need you. We're family after all." Family. The word nearly made me laugh. Where was family when I sat alone that Thanksgiving night? Where was family when he declared I wasn't his child anymore? I let them speak. Please. Apologies. Promises. My mother whispered, "Please come home." My sister mumbled about missing me. My brother suggested we could start over. And then at last, my father lowered his head and said the words I thought I'd never hear. "I'm sorry." For a long time, I stayed silent. The entire lobby felt like it was holding its breath. Finally I spoke. "I wanted this moment once. I wanted your approval. I wanted to belong at that table. But now." I gestured around, to the office, the team behind the glass walls, the empire I had built alone. "I don't need it. I don't need you." My father's eyes widened. He looked like a man watching his crown slip from his head. "You disowned me first," I continued, my voice steady. "And in doing so, you gave me the greatest gift. Freedom. Freedom to become who I was meant to be without your control. I don't hate you. I don't even resent you. But I will never go back." My mother began to cry softly. My sister reached out, but I took a step back. My brother muttered something under his breath, but I didn't care to hear it. I wish you well, I said finally. But I'm not your safety net. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your child to control anymore. I am my own person. And this, I gestured to the building, the life I had built, is my family now. With that, I turned and walked back inside, leaving them standing there in silence. That was the last time I saw them together. And for the first time in my life, I felt no pain in walking away. Because I realized revenge wasn't about making them suffer. It was about proving to myself that I didn't need them to begin with. And that, truly, was the sweetest victory of all.